If you are motivated to do something, find out what it is that you want to do and do it.
99% of the world wants peace, I think, and that's great.
That our government is us.
There have been times like this when people have gotten together and have won battles.
Hello, this is the unknown soldier for the peace tapes. Now, these tapes won't work unless the word is spread. In order to do this, you must have a pen and paper ready to copy down the phone number or the address of the group of your choosing so you can get in touch and support this faltering planet and make an attempt to save this for ourselves as well as future generations. You know, you can make a difference. In the 1960s, the world was going through a great change. There was a youth taking to the streets for the first time since our country was formed. What was in people's minds? Well, let's see.
When I came to Chicago in 68, my mother said, what are you going there for? And I said, well, to wreck the Democratic Party. And she said, well, dress warm, it's a windy city.
The 1968 Democratic Convention brought the world to Chicago and Chicago to its knees. Pitting Mayor Daley forces against pro-McCarthy demonstrators, everything was confused, our people as well as our leaders.
Have you got an extra camera in case the lights go out?
From the first time we landed on the shores of America, we had an idea: freedom of speech. This became our First Amendment. We worked hard on the Constitution, its principles intact. It wasn't really put to the ultimate test until nearly 200 years later. From the streets of Chicago to the steps of the Capitol, from inner city slums to the very closed doors of the Pentagon, from shore to shore. Why? Because our forefathers made the law does not mean that our leaders at that turbulent time, the 60s, could follow it. Well, by hard work and hours of legal representation, we emerged into the 60s as a country torn by both an unfavorable war, which turned out to be the biggest bureaucratic mess in modern times, the Vietnam War, and civil rights and justice. These issues were and still are our responsibility. These feelings experienced then were also very confusing, ranging from guilt to anger. Where were American heads at during that turbulent time that not only gave us peace rallies, art and music festivals, but the Vietnam era?
We didn't have the luxury of picking and choosing what we wanted to do because our lives were really molded by the war in Vietnam. And so it's a very hypothetical question when you ask, what would I have done differently?
Give me an F! Yeah! Give me a U! Yeah! Give me a C! C! Give me a K! K! Spell! What's that spell? What's that spell?
people have to begin to understand that nothing is going to change unless we change it, unless we do it. Now, I find that the easiest way to change something is just to not do it. It's very simple. Half of the things that we do on the planet are in lieu of may be correct, and the other half may be killing the planet. What we need to do in the next year or so is really try to chronicleize all of the things we're doing that are killing the planet. At least get a book on it. We need an encyclopedia of that, so that we can look at it and we can eventually have generations come into the world that have this information at hand. Then that's the only way it's going to change in that sense, is that we have to begin to chronicleize our own mistakes, because they're mistakes.
Horses that way from my home, oh Lord, Lord, singing freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from my home, singing freedom, freedom, freedom. Freedom, 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 freedom. I got a telephone in my bosom, and I can call from my heart. I got a telephone in my bosom, and I can call from my heart. When I need my brother, I said brother. When I need my father, I said father. When I need my sister, I said sister, mother. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it. Not afraid, not afraid, not afraid.
The Smothers Brothers, in what was to be one of their final tapings of the year, they were censored in 1968. The mood reflected the times.
And together we're going to sing a contemporary song about a great effort that some of the young men in our country are making. That's right. Yes, it's a song about a problem and how with good old American ingenuity, some people attempt to solve it. The song is called The Draft Dodger Rag. Count it off, George.
Oh, I'd prefer not.
Dickie, you count it off.
No, you'd count it off, Tommy. You're the one with the natural rhythm. You're the great musician.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Now, we're just typical American boys from a typical American town. We believe in God and Senator Dodd and keeping old Castro down.
And when it came our time to serve, we knew better dead than red.
But when we got to the draft board, buddy, this is what we said.
Oh, well, I'm only 18, I got a rough shit spleen, and I always carry a purse. Got eyes like a bat, and my feet are flat, and my asthma's getting worse. Oh, when I think of my career, and my sweetheart dear, and my poor old invalid aunt. Besides, I ain't no fool, I'm going to school, and I'm working in a defense plant. Got a dislocated disc and a cracked up back. I'm allergic to flowers and bugs.
And when a bombshell hits, I get psychedelic fits. I'm addicted to 1,000 drugs. When the weakness flows, I can't touch my toes. I can hardly touch my knees. And if the enemy came close to me, friend, why, I'd probably sneeze.
Well, I'm only 18 and got a ruptured spleen, and I always carry a purse. Got eyes like a bat and my feet are flat, and my asthma's getting worse.
Sweet. When I'm seeking my career and my sweetheart here, and
Poor old invalid Ann. Besides, I ain't no fool. I'm going to school and I'm working in a defense plant.
now Ho Chi Minh sure ain't no friend. That's plain for all to see. And I know someone's got a fight over there, but why does it have to be me?
So I wish you well, Sarge. Give 'em heck. I'm bound for Canada, you know.
And if you ever get a war without blood and gore, boy, I'll be the first to go. But until then, Mr. McNamara,
I'm only 18 and got a ruptured spleen, and I always carry a purse. I got eyes like a bat and my feet are flat, and my asthma's getting worse. Oh, when I think of my career and my sweetheart dear and my poor old invalid aunt. Besides, I ain't no fool. I'm going to school and I'm working in a defense plant. Make love, not
The 1970s were billed as the me generation and sure lived up to its name. Music was changing, but to what? Certainly music was not the only thing askew, but we again lost two more of our music hopefuls who seemed to calm a most apathetic time. Mr. Jim Croce and Mr. Harry Chapin. Jim died in a plane crash and Harry died in a car crash. When asked about the peace movement in the 70s, what possible answer was there?
Nothing to kill a peace movement like the war ending. Jesus, why did I do this? But yes, the war ended, so the peace movement kind of chilled out then.
Do you see a resurgence of it?
Yeah, well, there's more wars now. Thank goodness we got people like Reagan to come in and start some more wars so we can get a good peace movement going.
The world stopped many times in the peace movement. Some sources argue it dates back to when the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, while some contend December 8th, 1980, when John Lennon was assassinated by some animal. But all agree when first John Kennedy, then Martin Luther King, well, that was too much. Needless bloodshed, that last speech, the power, the glory.
After contemplation, I conclude that this award which I receive on behalf of that movement is a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time.
In the late 1950s, this clip was made to enlighten the world toward the growing threat of the nuclear age. It took many different countries to develop it, but only one to use it. Thank God.
When a neutron strikes, the atom is split. Neutrons split other atoms. The result is atomic energy. Shall the people of the world use this energy for the destruction or the betterment of mankind? The United States used this power to destroy Hiroshima. Of deadly radioactive rays, and in a matter of seconds, downtown New York would be a mass of ruins. Throughout the entire lower end of Manhattan, most people would be dead. All buildings from Washington Square to the Battery would be destroyed. In Chicago, from Halsted Street to Lake Michigan and from Chicago Avenue to Roosevelt Road, the city would lie in ruins. In San Francisco, devastation would be complete from Pacific Avenue to Townsend Street. and from Van Ness Avenue to the Ferry Building. One atomic bomb did this to a city and its people.
I don't think there's any winners. Either side will suffer the human suffering and the loss of many people, and not only at that time, but the suffering continues on long after the war is ended. So even conventional war, I think, is obsolete.
Our country is in profound crisis in many ways, that many people's lives are miserable and that money could be better spent elsewhere. And I think many in this movement, as young as it is, are beginning to make those connections, and that's going to be really important in terms of reshaping the political agenda of this country for the 90s. Well, the media has been a real problem in this. One of the things that came out at the conference last weekend of the National Network of Campuses Against the War was that in virtually every part of the country, people had experienced a media blackout. I mean, we all know that we're not getting any reliable information about what's actually going on in the Gulf, but virtually every group that stood up to talk about what was going on in their city or their town said that their activities either weren't being covered by the established media, or they were being systematically underreported, or they were operating in manipulative ways. For example, the Chicago demonstration that had perhaps as many as 10,000 people, the picture that accompanied the coverage in many cases was a picture of 20 pro-war demonstrators with big American flags. I mean, you can tell that, you know, pictures are being used, certain pictures are being used, certain pictures aren't being used, but also that people are being manipulated through the imagery that the mass media can use.
I think we ought to let everybody know the real reason we're out here today. Even though this nation is at war, we're not out here because we're unpatriotic. We're out here because we're the true patriots.
War in itself, the type of war the Vietnam War was totally illegal in the first place. I mean, we have every right. You know what I mean? I'm talking about us, the protesters, the people of society who believe in human rights. You know what I mean? I don't believe no country has the right to go journey around aggressively and erroneously jumping on another country.
People that are ahead a little, that want to deal with the issues that are going to deal with justice or peace or more respect for the planet, things like that, progressive issues. They're too hung up on what issues they should be fighting on and not concerned enough with the mechanics of organizing people. There's simply this side of the political fence, because it draws from universities, which are good at presenting problems but not solutions, and it draws from the churches, which, you know, you just have to be on the right side of the angels, that's good enough. They're not people that bring a pragmatic understanding of the science to community organizing in the way that, say, the great Saul Alinsky, the father of modern community organizing, did.
What are some...
I do. I am a community organizer. I have been since 1962. The group that I founded in 1962 is still there, bigger than ever. The group that I founded this year will be there in 50 years. Because there is a method to the madness, even to look in the streets here. It's one of the bad legacies that the younger generation has about looking at Chicago. It will seem like it's a video tape, you know. It's a lot of chanting and personalities. Wow, sex, drugs, rock and roll in the streets. They're very anti-leader, very anti-structure, not a good comprehension of what real grassroots organizing is all about. But I can tell you, even though it looks like a lot of chaos here, people that put this together or even come up with the idea of do your own thing or that it should be spontaneous, took a lot of organizing experience to get to this point. I look for the organizers that want to win their issues, victory or death. That's the name of the game. And ultimately, I tell them in the wee hours of the morning, you deal with your fear of death. Then things like going broke, being embarrassed, being called a lot of silly names that end with ist, being kicked out by your family, locked up in jail, or beaten up, they're all going to be easy because you've gone to the big one right off. You've dealt with your fear of dying. In the 60s, in the early 60s, because of the civil rights movement, going to Mississippi, things like that, we were given that experience. Today, it's kind of a little harder to dig at that, but basically that's where, that's where it's at.
I don't really trust politicians, but that's not the complete message of the song. It's poetry, and it has to speak for itself. I can't explain it to you.
A bright blue ball just spinning, spinning free, dizzy with eternity, painted with the skin of sky, brushing some clouds and sea, call it home for you and me. A peaceful place, so it looks from space, a closer look reveals the human race, full of hope, full of grace is the human face, but afraid we may let our home to waste. There's a fear down here we can't forget, hasn't got a name just yet. Always awake, always around, singing ashes, ashes all fall down, ashes, ashes all fall down. Now watch as the ball revolves and the nighttime falls, and again the hunt begins, and again the blood wind calls. On by again, the morning sun will rise, the darkness never goes from some men's eyes. Oh no, it strolls the sidewalks and it rolls the streets, staking turf, dividing up meat, nightmare, spook, piece of heat. It's you and me, you and me. Hey, big flash blade in ghetto night, Rudy's looking for a fight. Rat cat alley rolls and bones, need that cash to feed that Jones, and the politicians throwing stones, singing ashes, ashes all fall down, ashes, ashes all fall down. Commissars and pinstripe bosses roll the dice, anyway they fall, guess who gets to pay the price? Money green, a proletarian gray, selling guns instead of food today. So the kids they dance and shake their bones, and the politicians throwing stones, singing ashes, ashes all fall down, ashes, ashes all fall down. Shooting powders back and forth, singing black goes south and white comes north, in a whole world full of petty wars, singing I got mine and you got yours. In the current fashion, set the pace, lose your step, fall out of grace, in the radical, he rant and rage, singing someone got to turn the page, in the rich man in his summer home, singing just leave well enough alone, but his pants are down, his cover's blown, and the politicians throwing stones, so the kids they dance and shake their bones, cause it's all too clear we're on our own, singing ashes, ashes all fall down, ashes, ashes all fall down. Picture a bright blue ball just spinning, spinning free, it's dizzy, the possibilities, Ashes, ashes, all fall down. 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 Ashes, ashes, all fall down.
Somebody asked Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, what he thought of Western civilization, and he said, I think it's a good idea. And you could say that's not just for Western civilization, that's really for almost all civilizations, because they have all gotten caught in greed and fear and eternality. And all of those create violence. First thing you do is you get people together and you get them to find what is common, what they share in common, which is a desire for peace and a desire that their children should be safe and a desire that there should be enough to eat on every table. And then you put your cards on the table and see what everybody's got to work with, and then you see what you can do. But you've got to be of goodwill, and our country is not of goodwill, and many other countries are not of goodwill. We are very, very motivated by economic self-interest and by fear of loss of our power.
Well, we tried very hard to stay in this country, which we did, and we did our own work on peace and love in the way that we could, and I'm glad that you guys are doing it now.
Is Sean an inspiration to you? I know he must be.
Oh yes, Sean is an incredible energy and an inspiration to me and an encouragement, and I hope that we inspired his generation as well. It's an exchange, you know.
I've talked to a few people of 15 to 19 years old, and just about everyone is a definite peace freak. Does that make you feel happy to see young kids?
That's great. That's great, you know.
Because those old people are too, you know. Who wants peace? Everybody wants peace. So
yeah. No, but I mean, it wasn't like that. It was a minority effort in those days, you know, and people were sort of ridiculing us and all that. But now I think 99% of the world wants peace, I think, and that's great.
Our government is us, you see.
Nobody knows that.
That's right, and this is something that we have to make clear too. The government of the United States is us. The representatives of us are in Washington. So there is no government in Washington. There are only representatives of the government in Washington, and that government is us, the people, for, by, and of. And that's what that means, really. It means that those guys are not supposed to be making any decisions without asking us at all. That's the legal and illegalities of being the government, the people, or the misunderstanding of the government.
That's kind of how it should work, isn't it? If they shouldn't do anything unless they get a mandate from the people to do that. They should be servants of the people. And they should be responsible to them and responsive to them. I guess I think that's the way it is, and it's okay.